What do you do when the company you built your life around decides you're no longer useful? I was 55 years old when they sat me down in a glass-walled conference room and told me without blinking that my position was being restructured. After 15 years of innovation, leadership, and sacrifice, they slid a manila folder across the table like it was a breakup letter. No apology, no recognition, just a smile wrapped in legal paperwork. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have imagined, was that I had been preparing for this moment longer than they had. My name is Kira Jennings, and this is the story of how I turned corporate betrayal into an industry-wide reckoning and finally claimed the recognition they tried to erase. Before I get into it, let me know in the comments, have you ever been pushed aside by someone who took credit for your work? I'd love to hear your story. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because stories like this, they're just beginning. The woman across from me was Marjorie Thompson, Director of Product Strategy, and my former mentee. Sitting beside her was Denise from HR, armed with her clipboard and soft corporate tone. Marjorie began smoothing her blazer after careful review. "We're restructuring your position." Her words floated in the air like confetti at a funeral. "The company is moving in a new direction," Denise chimed in, sliding the severance folder toward me. "We deeply value your contributions, but as of Friday, your role will be consolidated under the product development team." The manila folder rested in front of me like a coffin. I didn't even open it. I already knew what was inside: 2 weeks of pay for every year of service, 3 months of health coverage, and a boilerplate NDA. I nodded, keeping my voice calm. "I completely understand." Marjorie blinked, clearly confused by my composure. They'd expected a meltdown, maybe even tears. After all, I was a 55-year-old woman being shown the door in an industry that worshipped 26-year-olds with pitch decks and ring lights. What they didn't realize, what they'd never even bothered to ask, was that I had seen this coming for weeks. Ever since a misdirected internal email landed in my inbox, a reply-all mistake buried in a thread titled "Post-Restructure Comms." That's when I learned the truth. They weren't just letting me go. They were planning to take everything I had built and erase my name from the story. They didn't know I had already moved. Quietly. Strategically. What TechVantage never realized was that the distributed processing algorithm that powered their best-selling software account sphere wasn't protected the way they thought. Months earlier, I'd asked legal why the patent for my algorithm hadn't been filed. I got vague answers. "We're looking into it." Just a delay. But I knew better. I dug deeper. And what I found: a memo, buried deep in the company archive marked "Internal Eyes Only," a strategy draft outlining plans to exclude individual attribution from the patent filing and claim it under company IP. In plain English, they were preparing to cut me out of my own invention. That's when I made a choice. Using my own equipment on my own time, I began refining the algorithm, a version that boosted efficiency by 43%. I kept meticulous logs, time-stamped commits, personal notebooks, videos, proof of ownership that no corporate clause could overwrite. Then I filed the patent myself under my own name. The moment I got confirmation of approval, I knew exactly how this would play out. Let them fire me. Let them pretend I was disposable. Because on the other side of that door, I had something waiting. So when I walked out of that conference room, I wasn't broken. I wasn't even angry. I was focused. Focused on the dinner reservation I had that night with their biggest competitor. Because Monday was coming, and they had no idea what I had planned next. That Friday afternoon, while HR was finalizing my exit paperwork, I was texting my real collaborators, the ones who actually knew my worth. Gregory Sullivan, CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's fiercest competitor. The message was simple: "It's happening. Friday is my last day." His reply came seconds later: "Perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight." At 7 p.m. sharp, I stepped into Meridian, a restaurant that didn't take walk-ins and didn't welcome cameras. Greg had reserved one of the private dining alcoves behind a screen of sculpted wood and silk. No curious eyes, no risk of leaks. They actually did it, he said, shaking his head as we sat down. Unbelievable. Cutting the very person who built their flagship product. I just smiled. Victor never understood what he had. He saw the flash, the interface, the pitch decks, but he never looked under the hood. Greg poured the wine, then slid a folder toward me across the lacquered table. Here's everything. As soon as you sign, Precision Systems will own exclusive licensing rights to your patent, and you'll officially join as Chief Innovation Officer. I opened the folder. 7-figure signing bonus, substantial equity, ongoing royalties, executive authority. But more than that, recognition. My name bold, clear, unmissable on the patent, the press release, and the architecture that powered a multi-billion-dollar product line. As I signed the final page, I looked up at Greg and said, "Let's make it public, Monday morning." He raised his glass. To new beginnings. I clinked mine. And to finally owning my value. Monday, at 7:00 a.m., the industry woke up to a press release that dropped like a bomb. Precision Systems acquires patent behind market-leading data algorithm. Dr. Kira Jennings appointed Chief Innovation Officer. By 8 hours, the emails had started. By 9 hours, TechVantage's legal team was in full panic mode. At 9:15, my phone buzzed with a text from Miguel, my lead developer at TechVantage, and one of the 6 engineers I had mentored for years. Complete chaos here. "What did you do?" I smiled and typed back, "Check your personal email. All 6 of you have offers waiting." Across town, TechVantage's executive conference room had transformed into a battlefield. Victor arrived to find board members dialed in remotely and legal combing through every contract I'd ever signed. People were wheeling in servers, pulling source code, trying to find a loophole, but they wouldn't, because I hadn't made one mistake. Every line of my refined algorithm was logged, timestamped, and developed off-site. I even filmed the final tests using my own home lab setup. Their negligence failing to file the original patent was now their Achilles heel. By 10:45 a.m., Victor himself sent me an email. Subject line, "Urgent. Please call me." Kira, it read. "There appears to be a misunderstanding regarding the patent. Please call me at your earliest convenience so we can resolve this." I didn't respond. I forwarded it to Precision's legal team with one sentence: "Let's handle this appropriately." By noon, industry analysts were calling it a strategic coup. Tech blogs were lighting up with headlines like "The Woman Who Outsmarted Her Own Company." And by 3:00 p.m., TechVantage's stock had dropped 7%. But the real fallout that was still coming. Because Victor hadn't just lost a patent. He'd lost his team. He just didn't know it yet. By Tuesday morning, the news had hit every major tech outlet. The headlines weren't just about my new role. They were about what it meant for women in tech, for veteran engineers, and for anyone who'd ever been dismissed as outdated. Fired Friday CEO by Monday. Kira Jennings secures patent that shakes the industry. The woman behind the algorithm. TechVantage forgot. Inside Precision Systems, the mood was electric. Greg had already onboarded my team. Miguel and the others had officially accepted their offers within 24 hours. They walked out of TechVantage in coordinated fashion, each submitting their resignation letters at 10:00 a.m. sharp. It was poetic. Victor must have thought he could survive cutting me loose. But losing the algorithm's creator and the only people who knew how it worked, that wasn't survivable. That was collapse. Wednesday, Greg walked into my office holding a printed email with a smirk. Guess who's finally trying to negotiate? It was from Victor's legal team, cold, desperate, and overly polite. They wanted to open a dialogue regarding mutually beneficial licensing options. Our legal team responded with the terms we'd pre-drafted: triple the industry standard licensing rate, a public acknowledgement of me as sole inventor, a signed apology from the prior leadership to be released to shareholders. "They'll choke on the acknowledgement before they choke on the cost," Greg said, shaking his head. "Then they can rebuild," I replied, sipping my coffee. "It only took me 3 years to perfect it. and rebuilding from scratch with their skeleton crew and zero technical guidance. Good luck with that. A week after I started at Precision, I stood in front of their full innovation team, Miguel, Anita, and 4 others from my old life. Behind me, the screen displayed a roadmap for the next-gen version of the algorithm, not AccountSphere. Something better. Something ours. Miguel leaned back in his chair during the meeting and said, "This is what it should have always felt like. Not fighting for table scraps, not defending every idea. That's the difference between being replaceable and being respected," I said. And respect, it changed everything. That Friday, we learned TechVantage had suffered a 23% stock drop in just 5 days. Major clients were pulling out. Shareholders were demanding answers. By the following Monday, their board held an emergency session. Victor Lawson was removed as CEO. Marjorie was gone. The head of legal resigned, a total sweep of the old guard. That afternoon, I got an email from Richard Donovan, the newly appointed interim CEO. No begging, no flattery, just the facts. Dr. Jennings, I've been brought in to guide TechVantage through this difficult transition. We would like to open discussions on a fair and respectful licensing agreement, and we are prepared to formally acknowledge your contributions. Would you be willing to meet? I forwarded the email to Greg with one line, Phase 1 complete. His reply came instantly iconic. 3 months later, I took the stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference. But this time, I wasn't in the audience watching someone else talk about my work. This time, they were introducing me. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Kira Jennings, Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems, and the inventor of the algorithm transforming enterprise data processing worldwide. And as the applause rolled through the auditorium, I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. The keynote stage lights were warm on my face as I stood at the podium, hundreds of eyes watching. Just a year earlier, I'd sat in the shadows at this same conference part of the TechVantage delegation. Victor had taken center stage, then boasting about innovations he didn't understand, let alone create. But this time, I was introduced with my full title, my real credentials, and for the first time in my career, my name attached to my work. Today, I began scanning the audience of developers, engineers, and students I want to talk about innovation ownership and what it means to be seen. Not just hired, not just thanked. Seen. My presentation detailed the algorithm, yes, but it also dove deeper into the culture that sidelines women after 40, into the managers who believe collaboration means erasure, into the companies that would rather replace you than recognize you. I didn't name Victor. I didn't need to. The industry already knew. And by the time I stepped off that stage, I wasn't just the woman who'd taken her credit back. I was the example, the case study, the new standard. That afternoon, TechVantage finally made their move. They announced a licensing agreement with Precision Systems, acknowledging me by name as the patent's sole inventor. Their language was stiff corporate and clearly drafted by legal, but it was public and permanent. From now on, anytime someone referenced AccountSphere or its derivatives, they would see one name stamped across the tech's origin, Dr. Kira Jennings. Richard Donovan, the interim CEO, followed up with a personal message. We hope this marks a new chapter not only for TechVantage, but for how the industry values its inventors. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I went to our next board meeting at Precision Systems, where we outlined plans for 3 new enterprise tools, all built on my architecture. The market share we were gaining from TechVantage wasn't just luck, it was inevitable. Miguel showed me a report. 2 of their top clients just migrated to our platform. Another's in contract negotiations. They waited too long, I said, flipping the page. Greg stepped in, pouring me coffee. They underestimated you until the entire industry knew better. Story of my life, I replied. Exactly 1 year to the day after I was told to clean out my desk, Greg walked into my office holding a bottle of champagne. Happy anniversary, he said with a grin. He set down 2 glasses and a slim black envelope embossed with gold. The front read, Women in Technology Leadership Summit, Keynote Invitation. "The board wanted me to give you the news in person," he said as he poured. "We just passed Tech Vantage in market valuation for the first time ever." I paused, feeling the weight of that moment settle over me, not like vengeance, not even like vindication, just balance. That's what it felt like. "They finally realized," I said quietly, "innovation isn't anonymous." He raised his glass. "To you, for never handing them the last piece of your legacy. To every developer, engineer, and strategist who's ever been told to know their place," I added. "May they build something of their own and sign their name to it." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in 15 years, I felt fully seen, not just as a woman in tech, not just as someone who'd survived corporate betrayal, but as the inventor I had always been. Transition, ending hook for next part. And yet the most meaningful part wasn't the salary, the title, or even the public credit. It was what happened next when younger engineers started reaching out with one question: how can I protect what I've built? And that I realized was the moment I became more than a story. I became a blueprint. Have you ever watched someone else take credit for your work? Have you ever been told your experience doesn't matter? Leave A in the comments if you believe innovation should always be named and credited. Subscribe and share this story with someone who needs to know that their ideas are worth protecting. In the weeks following the keynote, something unexpected began to happen. I started receiving messages, not from lawyers, not from board members, but from young developers, women mostly, some just starting their careers, others already a few years into the fight. The pattern was always the same. "Your story made me realize I've been giving too much away. I never thought to document my off-hours projects until now. They always said I should be grateful to be included. I didn't realize I was being erased." One woman, barely 30, told me she had always assumed that what she built on nights and weekends belonged to her employer until she heard me speak. She'd started keeping a development journal, logging timestamps, saving backups in a personal vault. "Because of you," she wrote, "I now know how to own what I create." It hit me then my battle hadn't just changed my story. It was quietly reshaping thousands more. Greg called me into his office 2 weeks later. On the screen was a breaking news article from Tech News Journal. Tech Vantage overhauls IP policy after public backlash. The article detailed sweeping reforms across the company, mandatory attribution for all named contributors in innovation reports, clear distinction between company time and personal time development, annual recognition awards for patented technologies, including financial bonuses and co-authorship guarantees. Guess where they got the structure for all that Greg said, sliding a printout across the desk? It was our internal IP guidelines at Precision Systems. Word for word, "I'll take imitation as a compliment," I said. "They're not doing it to be noble," he replied. "They're doing it to survive." Half their board almost walked out last quarter. Still, the ripple was real. Other companies followed. Policies changed. Contracts were revised. Industry panels suddenly featured words like authorship, age equity, and intellectual labor. A few even invited me to speak, not as the victim of a corporate mistake, but as the architect of a new standard. By fall, we'd launch the next evolution of the algorithm, more efficient, more scalable, and completely independent from any legacy code written at Tech Vantage. It wasn't just an upgrade, it was an entirely new foundation. Miguel and Anita presented the build at our internal showcase. Our metrics beat every benchmark by at least 40%, Miguel reported, pointing to the live dashboard. And we're only halfway through the optimization process. The applause from the room wasn't polite, it was thunderous. And as I sat there watching the team I'd built finally in a place that valued them, it hit me again, all the late nights. All the credit taken, all the polite smiles in meetings while younger, louder voices got the spotlight. It hadn't been for nothing. It had built this. I used to think I needed to fight just to keep my seat at the table. Now I was building the entire room, and I wasn't doing it alone. It was mid-December when the invitation came in. hand-delivered, embossed and stiff with corporate formality. You are cordially invited to Tech Vantage's year-end industry gala and awards dinner, honoring innovation in enterprise software. Special recognition, Dr. Kira Jennings, Industry Impact Award. I read it twice. Was it sincere, strategic, desperate PR cleanup? Maybe all three. I thought about declining, about letting the silence be my final word, but then I remembered something a mentor once told me. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't walking away, it's walking back in on your own terms. So I RSVP'd yes. The event was held at the Four Seasons downtown. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble velvet drapery, Tech Vantage never did subtle. I walked in wearing a black velvet gown and my grandmother's pearl earrings. My team came with me, not as guests of honor. The room went quiet when I entered. Marjorie wasn't there, of course. She'd quietly vanished from the industry altogether. Victor word was he'd taken a consulting role somewhere across the country, but no one really knew or cared. Richard Donovan, now the permanent CEO, greeted me at the entrance. "Dr. Jennings," he said with a respectful nod, "we're grateful you accepted. And more grateful for the licensing agreement that's kept our product line alive. Terms were fair," I said simply. He smiled. They were firm, but fair. Midway through the evening, they dimmed the lights for the awards portion. When they announced my name, the applause felt different. Not surprised, not polite, but earned. I walked onto the stage, accepting the crystal plaque with a steady hand. It wasn't about the object itself. It was about the fact that it existed. That for the first time in 15 years, someone from that company had stood at a podium and said none of this would exist without her. I gave no speech, just a nod of thanks. I didn't need to say anything. The silence behind me had already said it all. 1 year later, I stood on the rooftop of Precision Systems' new research center. We were launching a mentorship initiative, Creators Right, a program designed to teach young engineers how to protect their intellectual property, negotiate contracts, and build documented legacies from day one. Greg joined me, handing over a tablet showing the press release. Applications open this morning, over 600 signups in 3 hours. I looked out across the city skyline, the evening light catching on glass towers. "You know," I said quietly, "I used to think recognition was the reward." And now he asked. Now I know recognition is just the foundation. The real reward is changing the system so no one has to fight the way I did. He nodded. "You've already changed it, Kira." Maybe. But I wasn't done yet. If someone had told me the day I was fired that I'd end up here with my name on products, patents, policy reforms, I wouldn't have believed them. Because back then I didn't need revenge. I needed to be seen, to be heard, to matter. And now as I look back, I realize this wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving me right. Have you ever had your worth questioned, your ideas dismissed, your name left off something you built? Then the story is for you. Drop it in the comments if you believe credit should always find its rightful owner. Like, subscribe and share this video with someone who needs the reminder your value isn't negotiable. Your name matters. And when they erase it, you write it back bolder, bigger, and in ink they can't scrub out.